Lots to discuss, lots to talk about. This big surprise about David Cameron. So let's have a chat to Ryan Shorthouse, who is Executive Chair of Bright Blue, which describes itself as a think tank for liberal conservatism. Thanks for joining us tonight, Ryan. How much of a surprise was this, David Cameron back in government as Foreign Secretary?
It was very surprising, but I think on the whole, I think it's a welcome thing. At the end of the day, he has a lot of respect and reputation internationally to do the job as Foreign Secretary. And at the end of the day, I think, the Tories are so far behind in the polls. There's a lot of disillusioned voters. There's a lot of disillusioned Tory MPs. And I think bringing back Cameron helps. I'm not going to say it's be transformative and suddenly their poll numbers are going to race upwards, but I think it will help a bit. And I think in two ways. The first is a lot of MPs now got their jobs basically in the Cameron era and look up to him as somebody who transformed the Conservative Party and made it electable. So I think it may boost Tory MP morale a bit, which I think is much necessary at the moment as you go and fight the next election. And the second is there's a lot of voters, particularly in those seats which are in more southern areas of England and western parts of England, which Cameron managed to secure off the Lib Dems in the 2015 election. And a lot of those people have been, the polls indicate this, some of the by-elections indicate this, have been, flirting with Keir Starmer and the Labour Party. And it may be that those disillusioned Tory voters or becoming ex-Tory voters think actually, Cameron back, there's a bit of respect for him there. I'll re-look at the Conservative Party. So my verdict is that this is probably a positive, albeit marginal, impact for Sunak. But I certainly think he needs something big to happen, and he's delivered it.
I think you mentioned there, didn't you, the Conservative Party so behind in the polls. Just going back a little bit, but before David Cameron was appointed, we had the sacking of Suella Braverman. Do you think that she was doing further damage to the Conservative Party with what she'd been saying over the past couple of weeks and further essentially aiding Labour's lead?
Look, I know Suella and I like Suella. I think she's a decent person and she's very public spirited. But I think the intervention that she made before the protests this weekend were unwise. I think the job of the Home Secretary is to reassure the public and make sure the necessary resources are in place, the necessary safeguards are in place for the police to do their job properly. And I think that intervention probably made matters worse, worsened views, made people a little bit more concerned, undermined the kind of respect that we need people to have for the police to do their job properly. So I think it was an unhelpful intervention. And at the end of the day, it's got to be the case at a cabinet level that you have a collective voice and a collective responsibility. And I think it was clear that the Prime Minister felt that Suella was not doing that, and a series of interventions, not only which she made before the protests, but also when she was talking about homelessness being a lifestyle choice, which I think was a very insensitive thing to say and factually wrong. I think she was obviously steering away from the collective voice and wasn't being a team player, and therefore Rishi needed to reshuffle her. So I think that's the decision-making behind it.
The message from the Prime Minister's office today to journalists has been this is about creating a stronger teamwork, togetherness. Do you think that David Cameron coming in, James Cleverly moving to the Home Office, does shore up a little bit of that strength within the Tory party?
Yeah, I think it does, actually, yes. And at the end of the day, David Cameron does not have aspirations to be the leader of the Conservative Party again, and doesn't want to become an MP. So in a way, his incentives are not to kind of undermine the Prime Minister or sort of position himself as a future leader. So I think, just his personal incentives are not one to sort of try and outshine Rishi, but to get behind him totally. So I do think the impact of Cameron coming on board will strengthen the team and boost morale. I think the other thing to say is there's been some promotions, people like Laura Trott and Victoria Atkins. She's now the Health Secretary. Laura Trott is the Chief Secretary of the Treasury. They're younger. They are younger ministers who are contemporaries, I think, of Rishi. And I think that, he's promoted them and they're sort of part of Rishi's tribe and Rishi's gang. And that will strengthen his authority. Like I was saying at the start about Cameron having a lot of people who admire him because basically he helped them win their seats, become MPs, become cabinet ministers. I think Rishi needs to do that as well. And now he's promoting people who will be loyal to him because he's brought them in and promoted them that level. Whereas actually last year, he kept a lot of the people who had been in the cabinet during the Liz Truss, Boris Johnson period. And I think he missed an opportunity to really strengthen his team, bring in new talent, revitalise the cabinet. And he's now doing that. Better late than never.
Well, one final view, Ryan, because some of the opposition parties have said this, is this not just a desperate move by Rishi Sunak, bringing back David Cameron, a tired response to somebody in Rishi Sunak that knows that he's not going to win the next election?
Well, I think, at the end of the day, the Tories are in a very difficult position. The polls show that. They need to do something much more radical and bold. He has done something bold on personnel. I think he needs to be much bolder on policy, particularly around taxation and housing and childcare. I think they're the big issues affecting middle England, and that's what he really needs to focus on. So he's done a good first step with being more radical on personnel. He now needs to be more radical on policy. I don't think it's a desperate thing. I think actually it shows that Rishi can attract somebody of David Cameron's caliber still. And like I say, I think the overall evaluation of this is that it will have a positive, albeit marginal, impact on the Tory party's fortunes in the months to come.
Ryan, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
That is Ryan Shorthouse.
News in 20 minutes, every 20 minutes. This is LBC News.
Ryan Shorthouse, the executive chair of Bright Blue.